Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Killing Eve season 3 episodes 5 and 6. Let's talk about it. So a lot has happened since I last reviewed this series for episodes 3 and 4. We got a huge deep dive into the origins of Villanelle for episode 5, which is absolutely phenomenal. I have so much to say about that episode. And then of course we'll be going through the other characters and what they've been up to for the last 2 episodes. But before we dive into this, first and foremost, be warned that this will be a spoiler review of the last 2 episodes of Killing Eve. And be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can catch new uploads and turn on notifications so that you can be told when I upload, because apparently YouTube is a mess. But without further ado, let's dive into my review of the last 2 episodes of season 3 of Killing Eve. So first of all, like I said, there was an emphasis on the character of Villanelle, especially in episode 5, where she was the main focus. She was the only focus of that episode, actually. All of the espionage and the conspiracies and stuff about the 12 was just stripped away, and instead we got this incredible character study in the case of Villanelle and where she comes from, her origins, her family, and it was absolutely fascinating. And truly one of Jodie Comer's just most incredible performances were given in this episode. It was an array of emotions that were playing on this character in this episode, and I think she did an excellent job of depicting all of them. So first of all, we get a chance to meet some of Villanelle's family members. Now this is something that she has been seeking information on from the previous episodes of the show, where she asked Constantine to find out more about her family. She wants to know where she comes from. Like she said in the previous episode, knowledge is power, and the fact that she didn't know where she came from kind of felt like a point of weakness to her. So she wanted to rectify that immediately, especially considering that she was gunning for that promotion that would put her in a greater position of power in the organization of the 12. But alas, with great power comes great responsibility, and sometimes when you go knocking on that door of knowledge, you may not like what you find there. And that is sadly the case for Villanelle, whose family members end up paying the price for that revelation. But we'll talk about that in a minute, because first of all, we have this heartfelt reunion between Villanelle and her mother. Now, Villanelle's mother ends up being integral in our understanding of the character of Villanelle, because they have far more similarities than we could have ever expected. And I feel like that's why she kind of resents her daughter. There is this feeling of self-hatred that she has projected onto her daughter, alongside the fact that her daughter has done some crazy things. She did some crazy things when she was younger, before she was even an assassin. But this time we get a chance to see how that reflects on her relationship with her mother, and how that affects the way that her mother views her daughter. And unfortunately, she doesn't view her in a very positive light at all. And at first it seems like she's playing along with the charade, although very reluctantly. She's not able to act the way that Villanelle is. She's not able to turn it on and razzle dazzle the way that she is. She very much wears her emotions on her face. So even when they're at the fair and everyone's having a great time throwing dung and winning fans, her mother still isn't able to falsify her happiness and her joy at her daughter being there. She still has that stoicism behind her features. And that moment where she pulls aside Villanelle's, I guess, half brother after he loses that competition, and she just speaks into his ear, and it looks like she's not saying anything too malicious, but afterwards it's revealed that she was telling him that he's brought shame to the family, that he's a disgrace, that she's embarrassed by him. That was such an insight into the true nature of this character and why it is that Villanelle and her mother have such a turbulent relationship. It's not just one-sided. It's not just a result of what Villanelle has done in the past, but also by that Jekyll and Hyde effect that her mother has, where she has this malicious, angry and vengeful side to her that perhaps isn't visible upon first meeting the character, but once spending a little bit more time with her, it becomes very clear why her and Villanelle butt heads. And also when it comes to Villanelle's relationship with her family, it seems like there's this huge roadblock that prevents her from getting too close to them, and that is the absence of the father. Now, her father is clearly the parents that she connected to most, because the way that she feels about her mother, a lot of that has to do with the fact that that her father is no longer there. And that definitely impacted her relationship with her family members, but also perhaps with other characters like Constantine, because we see in episode 6 that there's this tension between her and Constantine's daughter, because he is planning on getting away from it all. He wants to run and run fast. It turns out that it was Constantine who got his hands on the money from those accounts, and he is planning a huge getaway with his daughter. He is definitely looking for a midlife career change at this point, and he wants to start afresh in a completely different country. And Villanelle is able to coax the name of that country out of his daughter, who then reveals that they are planning to leave to Cuba. But there is that constant tension that exists between Villanelle and Constantine throughout episode 6, because she wants him to leave his daughter behind, and he is very aware that if they all went at the same time, that it would raise some major red flags to the 12 and they would be onto them. So he wants to protect his daughter first and foremost, and he wants to leave with her. And then he said to Villanelle that he would send for her, but that doesn't sit well with her whatsoever. It seems that she sees herself like his daughter, and that's where that relationship between Villanelle and her family, and especially her father, comes in. It ties in so well with this episode because there is that underlying theme of Villanelle seeking that parental attention, that parental guidance from Constantine, because clearly she wasn't able to get that from her own family, in particular her father and of course her mother. And this creates a sense of jealousy within Villanelle towards Constantine's daughter, whose name escapes me right now, but there's clearly that sibling rivalry aspect to their relationship, because there's the sense that Villanelle believes herself to be Constantine's adoptive daughter in a way, and the fact that Constantine's actual daughter is there and that he views her as a priority, especially during this whole getaway plan, just further proves to Villanelle that she is not his daughter. And even if it may not be conscious, it's playing into her insecurities about feeling unimportant and neglected. And that of course all stems from her origins of being left in the orphanage by her mother and actually neglected there. And speaking of Villanelle's mother, it would seem that she also has a substitute for her in the form of Dasha. Now this is a very complicated situation because Dasha has been tasked by the 12 to aid Villanelle by any means necessary, almost, not killing Eve though, by any means necessary other than that, to aid her in her progression to becoming a keeper. And she finally gets that promotion in episode 6. But it becomes very clear very quickly that that promotion doesn't actually mean much. She is essentially doing the same thing that she was doing beforehand as a regular old assassin. So she becomes incredibly disenchanted with the whole idea of working for this organization. And this, combined with the immense guilt that she's feeling over the way that she left things in Russia with her family, you know, only her brother and her half-brother were able to survive the blaze as she set the house on fire and killed everyone, presumably. So she's got a lot on her mind right now, and the fact that this revelation, that the promotion that she was given, the one that she was gunning for, ends up just being the same position that she had before with just a few more perks, that very much brings about some revelations and some self-reflection in the character. And for the very first time in a while, we see that she's starting to doubt the life that she has led. We see that she's maybe even starting to regret it. In particular, in episode 6, it becomes clear that this is not something that she is fully invested in anymore. It's perhaps not something that she takes joy in anymore, which is incredible in terms of character development. I love to see it. We're seeing this character move. She's been quite stagnant for a while now. We love the character of Villanelle over here, truly. Like, I think she's untouchable, but we still love to see some developments. We still love to see some progression in perspective when it comes to the character arcs. And that's why I truly think episodes 5 and 6 did the most in terms of building this character and making her a bit more well-rounded, because both episodes have dove into her origin and her psyche a little bit more, both in her past but also how that has informed her present and even her future. And speaking of her future and going back to her relationship with Dasha, it would seem that her future with the 12 and with that organization has become rather uncertain after the mess that was created in her trip to Romania when she was trying to assassinate a Romanian politician. Unfortunately, she ends up getting hurt and it just destroys her. Like, she has a full-on breakdown. This is one of the first times that we've ever seen Villanelle this vulnerable and this emotionally compromised. She's had it. She has reached her wits' end. And she is adamant as she's sitting there in the bathroom floor, just covered in blood, that she won't be doing this anymore, that she is done, that she is exiting this program for real. And Dasha is there to help her out and help her clean and sew up her wounds. But at the same time, she's stepping into this matriarchal role for Villanelle and providing her with a mother figure that she doesn't have. Speaking of mother figures, we return back to London in episode 6 to find that Caroline is still trying to find answers about what happened to her son. But she's had to brush up her Cold War era espionage playbook one more time because apparently there's someone at MI6 who cannot be trusted. She was supposed to get Kenny's phone logs sent to her, but she never received that information, and it makes her suspicious that perhaps someone at the office does not want her to find that information. So we once again see Carolyn using her Cold War spy tricks in the park, and she manages to get the information that she's after. And before we could even ask who this person could be, it's revealed that that person was in fact Konstantin. And the reason for Kenny's call was to ask a question that I have been asking since last season. Don't know about you guys, but I always suspected this. He wanted to find out if Konstantin was his father. I always thought that Konstantin was Kenny's father, and I hate the fact that the character is dead now because that whole storyline just kind of abruptly ends with his death. It would have been so interesting to see if that was the case and to see if Konstantin could develop some sort of relationship with his son. That would have been so cool to me, but alas, we lost this great character. And by the way, I'm really missing this character at this point. Can I just say, like, I think it was a mistake to kill him off. Yes, it has acted as a great motivator and driving force for the season, especially for the characters of Carolyn and Eve, but I think it was a mistake to kill him off because there's just something missing from this show. And Bear, who works at that publication, he's just not even close to being an adequate replacement. There is no competition. Kenny was just such a great character and a great moral compass that the show very much needed, and I'm really missing him at this point. Anyways, Carolyn is able to find out what Kenny wanted to know from his call with Konstantin by taking him on this crazy drive where it looks like their lives are being threatened and at any moment they could topple over a hill, but she means business. Like, this is a mum who's out on a mission. She wants to find out what happened to her son, and she may not be the most emotional person out there in terms of her outward portrayal of emotion, but she's definitely feeling a loss here. She's definitely mourning, and the crazy drive that she goes on with Konstantin is proof of that. But that's not the only information that Caroline is able to drag out of Konstantin, because during that crazy ride, he unwittingly admits that he kissed Geraldine, which is just absolutely not. And that's obviously not the most pertinent matter in that moment. She wants to find out what happened with Kenny, but she definitely addresses the situation afterwards when she's having dinner, or at least preparing dinner, pork pies as she wanted, with her daughter. And she finally addresses the situation and asks her, "You were lying to me about this? I'm not able to lie. I personally do not have that gene," as she says, "but you were able to lie to me about whatever is going on with you and Konstantin," which I can't for the life of me remember them kissing. I don't know when they would have kissed. Did I miss an episode? I don't know what happened there, is my point. But what I found really interesting during that dialogue was this confirmation of what I had suspected about the character of Caroline. She's not a very empathetic person, and there is that very interesting family dynamic between them where Geraldine is the empath and she is highly emotional, but Carolyn and Kenny obviously weren't. They were a bit more disconnected from emotion and lying and that gene, wherever that is. She definitely connected more with her son. She had more in common with her son, which is an interesting parallel to the relationship between Villanelle and her mother, but I digress. Whereas it appears that Geraldine had more in common with her father. Now, whether or not Geraldine and Kenny share a father is very unclear. I'm assuming they don't, just so that I could keep up that mystery of whether or not Kenny is Konstantin's son, because I like to live in this little he's not alive anymore, just let me live, okay? And the final point when it comes to Carolyn's little storyline is that is not the only time that her story and that of Konstantin's converges, because we do find out that Carolyn's arch nemesis at work turns out to be Dirty. Yes, of course, he is a bad guy. He is working for the 12 and he is threatening Konstantin to find out who it is that emptied their accounts, or at least stole from their accounts. And unbeknownst to Paul, the person who he is sending out to find out who stole the money is the person who stole the money. Of course, it is Konstantin who is planning his getaway. But Paul is making it very clear to Konstantin that whatever happens, they may both get the blame, but only one of them will fall, and it ain't gonna be me. And finally, we've reached the titular character of the show, that is Eve. Not much has really happened to Eve in the last 2 episodes. We had this huge mind-blowing moment where Nico was killed. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Nico was killed by Dasha, who was masquerading as Villanelle so that Eve would finally break things off with her. That connection would be broken. But Dasha should have known. Maybe it's because she's new. She's new to all of this. But I know, we all know, that that would not be enough for Eve to completely quit Villanelle cold turkey. She, in fact, immediately suspects that something is up. She doesn't quite believe that Villanelle would do this because she knows that that would be the breaking point in their relationship. And she's talking to Bear and Jamie. She's like, no. Like, she wouldn't do this. She knows that if she did this, it would be over. Because in Eve's mind, Villanelle is just as invested in their relationship as she is. So she's like, no. My girlfriend wouldn't do this to me. Is basically what her argument is. And the whole time, the other guys are just like, but she's an assassin, like this is her job, what's your reasoning? And to be fair, it makes sense because Villanelle did kill Nico's girlfriend but left him alive, so it wouldn't really make sense for her to all of a sudden kill him off unprovoked. But I personally like the fact that we're kind of moving along quickly when it comes to that storyline. I said before in the previous review that I really did not want them to drag out that whole storyline because the best part about this show, I said it once, I said it twice, I'll say it again, the best part about this show is the chemistry between these 2 characters. And if they spent the remainder of this season with Eve believing that Villanelle killed Nico, it would drag, it would just be so irrelevant, it would get old. I'm happy that Eve she's smart, she's picking things up, even though it's for all the wrong reasons. She's at least got an idea in her head of what actually happened, which leads her to actually meet Dasha in person, which is a very interesting interaction there. Dasha does not like losing. She's a very sore loser. She happens to lose that bowling match that they have, and it was a very cool scene as well because it was so casual. Eve would just get a strike and she wouldn't even look back, and she would just talk to Dasha like nothing was even happening. And Dasha even asked her, like, do you bowl often? And she was like, no. I appreciated that. I think it was a really cool moment for this character this season because for the most part we've seen her in a very dour place. Although speaking of dour, guys, Nico is alive. At least he can't speak right now. Like, he's not taking up a lot of screen time. He's got this board and he just tells Eve to basically F off. And I'm okay with that. Like, if they just never see each other again, I'm fine. It's not that I despise the character of Nico either. It's just that it's precious screen time that we can't afford wasting on him. That's how I see him, as a waste of screen time. I wish he had died at the beginning of this season instead of Kenny. Poor precious Kenny. I'm so upset. But I'm certainly not unhappy with the quality of the episodes that we've gotten in the last 2 weeks. I think they have been superb. I think this season is improving as it goes along. Although I will say that episode 5 was definitely a bright point in this season, even more so than episode 6, because we really got an amazing insight into this character. So that's it from me. Now that I've told you guys my thoughts on Killing Eve season 3 episodes 5 and 6, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of the show down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.